Hi, it's me and this is my 7-year-old computer from 2012. It has a Core i3 second generation, 4GB of RAM and 500GB of spinning hard drive. But it ran just fine up until 2016. Hell, I even played FIFA 14 on it. It was more of a slideshow than gaming, but still. Anyway, jokes aside, in 2016 I installed Windows 10 on it, and 6 months after installing Windows 10 I noticed the computer getting slower and slower. In 2019 it is at the point of being barely operable. Even simple tasks like opening Word, Excel, PowerPoint takes forever to load. Don't get me started on the web browser. My Opera web browser takes almost 20 seconds to load. If you haven't been thinking by now, yes, I do need to buy a new computer. But before buying a new computer, I thought about upgrading this old computer, mainly because the cost of upgrading an old computer is much less than buying a new one. So, that being said, I went into Amazon and searched for SSDs because I've heard about SSDs being much faster than the traditional hard drive and improving performance. I found this WD 120GB SATA hard drive at 1800 rupees and ordered it immediately. After it arrived, it was time for me to install it then. Okay, the first thing we need to do is unscrew the two screws in the back and open up the side panel. This reveals the messy cable management inside. I'm so sorry about that. I'm going to use the SATA data and SATA power cable of my DVD writer. The next thing to do is taking out the hard drive and unplugging the SATA power and SATA data cable. Nextly, I am going to install the SATA data and SATA power cable to my SSD and put it back behind the hard drive where it can get ample airflow from the hard drive fan. Then I will plug back in the SATA power and SATA data cable of my hard drive and put it back in its place. The last thing to do is to plug the SATA data cable of my SSD into the motherboard. That being done, I can put the side panel back in and screw the two screws and we are done for testing. Okay, here comes the most disappointing part of this video. My computer is so old that it does not support SATA 3 technology that this SSD uses. But it has a SATA 2 technology, which is a previous generation. But I'm very lucky because SATA 3 is backwards compatible, so the SSD will work on my computer, but the speed of the SSD will be half. I will throw up a real-time test of launching Opera and then Spotify, and you can see in real time that how much SSD is faster or slower than the hard drive. This is a MLC SSD, which means it has a larger longevity than the other cheap SSDs made up of TLC SSDs. But it does not have 3D NAND storage technology, which means that it is not the best SSD on the market. While you guys are watching the SSD versus HDD comparison, let me tell you about the SATA 2 to SATA 3 confusion. SATA 3 supports transfer speed up to 6 gigabits per second or 600 megabytes per second, whereas SATA 3 is rated for half of the transfer speed, that is 300 megabytes per second or 3 gigabits per second. The SSD is rated at 545 megabytes per second transfer speed, but due to the SATA 2, it will run only half of its speed. You can see in the crystal mark testing the speed difference of SSD and the hard drive. Alright, so even in SATA 2, the SSD crushes my hard drive. Note the hard drive is also in SATA 2, but still I will definitely recommend an SSD to anyone who is buying a new computer or upgrading an old one. Even though an SSD costs about 4 times as much as a traditional hard drive, the performance just outweighs the costs. That being said, I can always install a PCIe to SATA adapter on my motherboard and run both the SATA SSD and the hard drive through the PCIe to SATA adapter, and it will run at SATA 3 speeds. But the PCIe to SATA adapter costs about 1000 rupees, which is more than the half of the price of the SSD. That being said, I want to repeat something. If you are buying a new computer or upgrading an old one, definitely use an SSD. That's all I had to say. Now it's time for you guys to say down in the comment section below what you thought about this video and would you upgrade to an SSD. Peace, and may the force be